Hey guys, so today we're trying to install some fog lights on the 84 to 96 XJs. This is my 1994, and there is like nothing online on how to do this. So let me show you what's going on. So everything I've seen says that the wiring for this switch is, or the connector for this fog light switch is inside this panel, but on mine at least it isn't. So we've done some custom wiring here just to power the switch, which we're running through the dash. We've got the ground set up right there. And then this wiring comes through the firewall right there, which we've then connected to the fog light wires. So this one is blue, that powers the fog lights. Then this one will be black, but we've just had to add a little bit of extra. And then you'll need the wiring harness from your donor Jeep, anyone that has fog lights. And so we've had to basically rebuild this. Shout out to my friend's dad, Mike, who's been a huge help with the wiring because I'm not an electrical guy. But that's basically the setup. So fog lights work now. We just got to get everything plugged in. But if we turn on this switch, light illuminates, and we have fog light power. So we'll have to get everything buttoned up, but hopefully this kind of shows you guys the process if you want to add fog lights to your pre-facelift XJ, because there's not much resources online showing you how. Hey guys, so I realized yesterday when filming that I didn't necessarily explain the wiring situation as well as I could have. So I'm going back here now just to show you guys everything kind of after it's buttoned up. This one here, by the way, is the door buzzer wiring, and I believe it might also control the interior cabin lights. So I'll button that back up too. But basically, the reason why we wired into the fuse panel there was because the wiring harness that I pulled from the donor Jeep was very corroded. 30 years of road salts and winter and rain and whatnot wasn't kind to the copper pins in the harness, and so the fog lights weren't working very well with the stock pin connectors, and those old copper pins are pretty hard to find. At least it turned out to be the case for us. And so this spot here on the fuse panel, you'll want to check it yourself with a test light, but that's 12 volts when the ignition is on. And so we have a twisted pair here connected to the fuse panel that wires directly into the back of this switch. And so the reason I did this was because the donor Jeep that I pulled the headlight harness and the switch from in the junkyard, the entire roof was caved in, and so I wasn't able to actually pull this panel off properly. I had to pull everything out by hand and break stuff, and so I wasn't able to get the factory connector anyways. So wiring it directly on with some connectors bypasses that connector, and then by connecting it directly to the fuse panel on power, it allows us to turn the fog lights on whenever we want. Because if I remember correctly, the fog lights on the stock wiring, if you're using your stock connector, will only work when your low beams are on. They will not work when your day lamps are on or when your high beams are on. And so this allows us to independently control the fog lights irrespective of whether or not our headlights are on. The wiring for this switch that we saw earlier comes out here and then goes through the firewall, and we just wired it directly. We bypassed the harness because it was so corroded. So the blue wire in the donor wiring harness is the fog light power, and so we just wired the ground wire and the power wire directly to this twisted pair, and that's how we got the fog lights to work. So hopefully that explains things a bit better for you pre-facelift guys that want fog lights, because there's not much information on this online. If you have the factory connector wired in here, then it'll probably be easier for you, assuming your connector in your harness is not corroded like mine was. It might be a little bit more plug and play for you than it was for me. But if you run into this problem where you don't have the connector here, or your harness is toast like mine was, you may have to go in and bypass the switch and just wire it directly. And then you're able to just connect directly to this switch. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Good luck.